Building in a Small Town, where we're talking to entrepreneurs, community leaders, policymakers, and more to find out how they're building things in small towns. I'm your host, Shelby Smith. Podcast. Today I am joined by a dynamic mother-daughter duo. I have Amy Cox and Robin Collins of the Vinery. Did you just call it the Vinery or the Vinery Flowers?
The Vinery Flowers.
Vinery Flowers. Okay, awesome. So they are just outside of Nevada, between Nevada and Colo is their flower farm. And they have a lot of different projects that they've been able to build over the last couple years, and I'm just really excited to talk to you both today. So thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So Robin, let's start with you. Did you grow up on a farm outside of Nevada? Or you?
No,
what's your story?
I grew up in a small town in Story County in McCallsburg.
Okay.
My dad was a banker, so but I always had a garden. Always. It was the 70s. I think everybody ate out of their garden in the 70s. So yeah, I always, even as young as first grade, I had my own flower garden actually.
Yeah.
So it's something I just love doing, something I've always done.
Did your parents have one, or was it just you?
The flowers were mine, but vegetables,
Everyone.
It was everyone's job, yeah.
They just gave you a little section and were like, go to town, grow what you want?
Yeah, it was a 4-H project, yeah.
Oh, okay. That's awesome. That's the way, I feel like 4-H is the way that a lot of people, dabble in things like that. So my brother, which, Amy, you know my brother. I don't know if you know my brother.
Mm-hmm.
But so that was my dad. My brother was obsessed with farming, so my dad gave him a little section to have his own little Indian corn patch. And that was his thing. He had 2 sections, if I remember growing up right, and one of them kind of was doubled as a waterway, which I think probably impacted
his production.
Yes, his production was probably not what he wanted it to be, but I just always remember him having those 2 Indian corn patches. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you grew up doing the gardening thing. Mm-hmm. Did you go to Colo Nesco at the time, or did McCallsburg?
It was just Nesco. Yeah.
Okay, so it was
no Colo.
No
just
Colo.
Zeroing McCallsburg.
Yep.
Gotcha. Okay. How many did you have in your graduating class?
30.
Okay, so that's a pretty decent size, relatively speaking. And then did you go off to college or anything else?
I did. I went to business school for secretarial work, which seemed like a good mom job to, be able to do for my life, but didn't really do it for me.
Yeah, well, after you graduated, did you end up going down that path a little bit, like into the secretarial work?
Yeah, I was a high school secretary in Nevada for 10 years.
Yeah. And then when did you meet your husband?
When I was in college.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did he grow up on a farm?
He's a farmer, yes.
Okay, so then did you know going in that was what he wanted to do? Was he wanted to farm?
Yes, he was already farming. It was family farm right out of high school. That's what he pursued, and yeah.
Yeah. So then, growing up with a banker for a dad, how'd that feel?
I don't know.
What did you think of it?
Like, what did you think of? Yeah, what did your dad think of you marrying a farmer?
Seemed to be okay with it.
Yeah. Well,
it wasn't really a factor. I don't really think.
Yeah. I suppose McCallsburg not being very big too, your dad would have dealt with farmers.
Well, my dad grew up on a farm also, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So back to your roots, so to speak.
Sure.
Okay, gotcha. So then when you moved out to the farm and you started having kids, like, were you involved in the farming at all?
I have always been the bookkeeper. Yeah.
So that secretarial work did kind of come in handy.
Yeah, it does. I'm still doing that part, yes.
whether you meant for it to be or not, that's good. Okay, so then Amy, tell me a little bit about your story.
So growing up, she had a big garden. My mom had a big garden, so we always had to work in it. It was kind of like forced labor from my childhood view, obviously now it's great for kids to be in the garden and learn all that, but as a child it felt like a job, and I really hated working in the garden.
What,
So did my
like,
sister
what
and
in
brother.
particular did you hate? Like, what was it that you hated? Was it
Picking green beans. That was like the worst. And she had like an acre of vegetables with our neighbor. This is the summer I remember anyway. I'm sure it was like a very small part of my childhood, but you know how when you're a kid you just like,
yeah, it feels very impactful.
yes, absolutely. So anyway, I grew up totally working in the garden all the time, and I really did not like it. And then I graduated high school, went to cosmetology school, moved to Florida, did hair there for a while, and that's where I met my husband. And then we traveled for a little while around the world, came back to Iowa and started having kids. And then I was doing hair, like, I don't know, maybe 2-3 years in Iowa, not very long. And it just didn't really work out. I was basically paying for my kids to go to daycare. So I'm like, I'm gonna stay home and I'll figure out something else to do. And it was a few years before my mom came to me with this idea of flower farming. And I love being creative in any aspect. I love designing homes, clothes, flowers. I love anything creative. So I'm like, yeah, this sounds actually even better than doing hair, because sometimes you can't exactly be creative in that field. It's just like, I need a trim and a touch up, everyone. And it's just the same thing over and over. So I was right on board with the flower farming. I thought it sounded so much fun. And I was probably like 31 when we started this. So my kids were younger. It was great because I could bring the kids to the farm with me. You know, they could help if they wanted to. I didn't force them to help. So one of my kids likes to help and one doesn't, but it was great. Like, it was a good work-life balance. And then at that point I was living in town. 2 years ago, I moved out to the farm, and now living there, it's even better with work-life balance. They're getting a little bit older too, and one is still interested and one is not.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's pretty much how we got into it.
So when she came to you with this idea, were you having flashbacks of like, oh my gosh, this is going to be another occasion with the garden? Or were you immediately like, oh yeah, everything about this, I love it?
I think she got me into it slowly.
I did, by design, yes.
Sneaky.
Small garden first.
And she also was like, I will grow the flowers and you sell the flowers.
Mm-hmm.
And we can both design, because she's just as creative as I am. But the growing takes so much more time, you know. It's much more labor intensive. So I would help her do things. I wasn't out there nearly as much as her, but I would harvest and, you know, help plant and all that kind of thing. So it was like a slow process, a slow build. And I would say at this point in my life, like, I love it. I love being out there. I put on a podcast or a book tape and you can just go to your own little world, you know? It's awesome.
It's a lot of working with your hands, but not necessarily with your mind.
Yeah.
That's kind of the way I look at with the crickets. Similar in sort of scale. That's why I consume a lot of podcasts and books on tape like you, because I'm doing a lot of repetitive things with my hands, where I need to be sort of conscious. Like, I need to not, you know.
It's like a meditation.
It is. And so I'm working with my hands and not my mind, and so it's great to be able to, you know, consume different educational things and all that kind of thing. So Robin, what drew you into the flowers? I mean, you had this little flower garden growing up, and you had this gigantic garden apparently with a lot of green beans.
Yeah. Well.
In your defense, I also like green beans. Nope, somebody else can pick those. I don't know what it is about them. They're a pain, so I get it. Green beans and peas a little bit too. Maybe it's those two. I love eating them and I appreciate them, but it's the labor of.
It's tedious.
It is super tedious. So then tell me, why do you feel like the flowers? Why were you drawn to the flowers? What gave you this initial idea of, hey, I think we could do this. I think I'm gonna rope my daughter in slowly without knowing.
If you're trying to build a business on growing vegetables, you know, a bunch of carrots is 50 cents versus a bouquet of flowers is usually, going to be at least a $15 product right off the bat. So that's part of it, but also I just thought it fit Amy's personality a lot better.
Yeah.
To play with flowers than to grow
They're
vegetables. Yeah.
They are very photogenic, and that's one of those things I always, my sister-in-law I think took some early pictures of you guys' business, and I saw those pictures and I was like, I wish I had a really photogenic crop. Like, this is amazing. I'm always jealous of flower farmers in that respect. So then when you decided to go down this path, like, had you guys had conversations about like, hey, I need to do something that's more creative, like I need to do this, or did you have the urge to start the business? Like, was it kind of a combination?
I mean, I think I just know her pretty well, and I knew it would be a good fit for both of us.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm retirement age, closing in on, so it's a great thing. I think I'll always be the type of person who wants to be productive and not necessarily the traveling retired person. So
Yeah.
it fits my vision of the future as well.
Yeah.
To be out in the garden as long as I can.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And you get to do outdoor work and putting your hands in the soil. It's just
Yeah.
it's a different kind of therapeutic, I would say.
Yeah.
But so then when you approach her or you start thinking about approaching her, did you think we'll just start with this little patch and see what happens, or like how big was your initial allocation of
Well,
land?
yes, I wasn't sure that she would really love the gardening part, and I didn't want to bite off more than I could chew. So yeah, we took it slow. I wanted to make sure that, because I didn't want her to do it if she really didn't want to for my sake. I wanted her to do it for herself. So let's just take it slow and see a little bit more every year. And yeah, I think we're ready to really ramp it up now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've kind of put systems in place and figured out what works and what doesn't.
Yes.
So then that first year, who made the decision on what you were going to plant?
Not me.
Okay.
Sure.
Why?
Because she knew all the flowers.
Well,
I literally didn't know.
She was learning everything.
Yeah.
Okay, so you had some of
She
this
taught me.
previous experience. So what did you initially choose to plant?
It did
Do you
grow.
remember?
I remember the zinnias were the big thing that year.
Snapdragons.
Cosmos.
Probably like 30 to 40 varieties. A lot.
And when you say varieties, you don't just mean colors, or do you mean colors? And
No, different types of flowers and colors in the flowers. Yeah.
all of them. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't, at the beginning, it was what's easy to grow. We had a very small space, so what will have the most impact will provide us flowers all summer long versus maybe just in the spring or just in the fall. Yeah, but we've been slowly adding those things into now.
Yeah.
More perennials. Yeah.
Gotcha. So
Yeah.
when you guys first started growing them, had your first flowers to harvest, do you remember your first paying customer?
I
No.
don't either. No.
It was probably a friend.
Yeah.
Most likely,
Or
yes.
family,
Yeah, somebody
Yeah.
like that.
That first year was definitely the first year. What we did to sell was we had ball jars and we delivered them for free in like the Nevada area. And I'm sure we were losing money, but it was just, I don't know. We had a lot of people asking for them, mostly friends and family, but some strangers too. And we just like delivered them around Nevada. That was the whole year. That's all we did. We really weren't ready to build a website and really be selling flowers because this was our first year, and we're just trying to get long stems, long vase life. We're really focusing on the quality of the product,
Yeah, growing something to be able to sell eventually, sort of situation.
Right.
Because I gotta imagine, did everything go completely smoothly on that
Actually,
end that year?
The first year it did. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what do you
Probably tricked us. Like,
Probably, yeah.
This is
what's so
so
hard about
great,
this?
yeah.
and so that's funny. That's always just makes you go in with optimism that it's good. It's one of those things. I think a little momentum early on helps, and so in a situation like that, for sure, it would have been awful if that did not go that way. So then, when you're thinking about planning for a flower production for an entire year, are you like staggering plantings?
Mhm.
Is that what you did that first year, or you just picked different varieties that you were like, this is a 5 month, this is a 3 month, you know?
I think we didn't know a lot of that the first year,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, not the first year.
Like we tried to succession plant, which, you know, like every 2 weeks put a new planting or 3 weeks put a new planting, but
yeah.
it didn't really work out the first year. Our garden was full and we didn't want to pull anything out. I think we didn't really understand how flower farmers like cut the plant and sell the whole flower and that's the flush and then you replant. Like we were just cutting little bits off so the plant would last all year,
Right.
you know?
Whether it was productive or not, sort of
Right.
situation.
Right.
So then where was it purely trial and error learning at that point, or where did you end up going for figuring
Learning.
that out? Yeah.
Or you want to talk about our first class? It was Erin Benzakin
Mhm.
from Florat Farmers. She is out of Seattle, or like,
Skagit Valley.
yeah.
Yeah, but she's like the famous flower farmer who
So-
really has got this movement going, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's out of Washington State.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So we paid and took her class
And was it virtual?
Yes.
Or okay.
because it was actually 2020, right?
I think it was 2019 when we took her class.
Then why was it virtual?
I mean,
Just how
it
she
always
did it?
was. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
In my, I think she did on farm classes for a while, but then,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, we started with that, and it was a big commitment. Like it wasn't cheap to take her class, and we bought her seed. We did like everything she did, you know, and it worked. Like she's a genius. It worked well. But since then, we've taken other classes and figured things out for ourselves and changed a lot of how we grow.
Yeah.
But-
So is there, would you then say that there is a pretty good sense of collaboration across like the flower farming world, or is it?
Yeah, really.
Absolutely.
It really
I was
is.
gonna say, or is it
Yes.
like a,
It's a really supportive.
We really found that out this past year.
yeah, which we'll talk about that. I do want to keep talking about this first year though. So then you're telling me, you know, you're cutting these bouquets, not correctly apparently, but putting them in ball jars, delivering them around Nevada. Talk to me about pricing. Like, how did you come up? Were you, as a bookkeeper, were you kind of like,
I
these are
wasn't.
my inputs?
I was not
She
employing those
always
skills.
undervalues
Yes.
things.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm getting over that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And tell me a little bit more about that. Like, do you undervalue them because you're worried that people won't pay the price? Or,
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And what is helping you through that?
Well, I'm not going to work this hard for nothing.
Yeah.
And, you know, sometimes I think people think, well, you're growing all the flowers, so you should be cheaper. But really, truly, no. You should probably be more expensive because you're growing a better quality product than something that was shipped from halfway around the world. And yeah, so I am starting to employ my bookkeeping skills into what is actually a fair price for this. And if people won't buy it, then
Then you find other people.
As I say,
Right.
they're not your market.
right, exactly.
And
Yeah.
so, have you thought about, or do you just off the top of your head have a feeling of like what part were you undervaluing? I have a feeling now.
My own time.
Yes.
Yes.
And I think that's very common with like everyone who starts a business is we don't factor in our labor. We think that's free, and it's not.
No.
You know, our time and our labor and all of that effort. And at some point, especially I find in, you know, I have a husband that has a landscaping business. He used to be a teacher, knew nothing about business. We are going into year 5 now, and he's finally kind of
It's about
Same.
us.
Yeah,
Going into
same.
year 5.
Yes.
yes,
Yeah.
kind of over the hump of like, I am done working this hard to, you know, not be paid for my expertise
Right.
and my knowledge. And because at the end of the day, like, you know, you've gained 4 years, you've paid other people to take those classes, to take on that knowledge and apply it in your situation. You should be compensated for it.
Right, exactly.
You're
Yeah.
not alone.
And honestly, I've known that for a couple of years, but man, it's taken until maybe even this winter to really sink in my head that, yeah, if I want to do this, then I need to do it right.
good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
I'm
I
glad.
think Amy got it a lot sooner than I did. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and yeah, like I said, I think it's everybody when they first start out. It's not an uncommon thing, but you're lucky that you have Amy to kind of remind you of that too. I
Definitely.
do the same thing for Willie. I'm just
Yeah.
like, don't you want to get paid what you're worth on this? So, okay, so then let's just say that you didn't have a super great pricing model on that first year. But what went into you deciding like this is what we're going to charge for a bouquet plus delivery? Was it just kind of looking around at what other bouquets were priced at?
Yeah. And talking to other flower farmers, there's a national list of what flowers, what's it on USDA or
Yeah,
something.
wholesale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Price.
just researching really.
Yeah.
And not just, picking a number out of thin air.
Yeah.
But I've also been trying to keep track of how much time I spend on a particular type of flower to do enterprise units, and then figure out what that flower is really worth based on how much of my time it took to grow. Yeah.
Yeah, because they're not all the same.
So for example,
Exactly.
dahlias will take so much more time than a zinnia, honestly. The Japanese beetles come out, and it's really all you do is try to fight the bug war. If you're trying not to use pesticides.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Oh,
they should be the most expensive flower ever. If
So
you're growing
really,
it in Iowa.
now that she's doing this and figuring out what each flower's worth or what we should be charging, we're definitely we're still growing so many different flowers. So this will help us like pare down like what's actually making us money, what do we need to focus on, and hopefully that cuts our workload down. And
you're figuring out how to optimize.
Yep.
Essentially, what
I,
makes sense.
I can even say how many flowers we've been growing over the years, but it has to be more than 50 varieties. It's a lot of flowers.
That is a lot. That's a lot.
And it's fun to have all these different varieties,
Yeah.
but it's not lucrative.
Right. Well, and it's I think the saying is like 80% of your business comes from 20% of your efforts. Generally,
I believe it.
yeah, it's across like almost every industry. So I gotta imagine flower farming is relatively the same. So then that first year you said you weren't ready for a website and all of that kind of stuff. So how did you have Instagram, Facebook? Like were you social media at that point? Had you named the business at that point?
Yes.
Okay.
We named the business right away.
Was that easy?
No. Well, I mean, it didn't take like a week, but
Yeah. Who came up with the name?
I did.
Okay.
Right? Yep.
So it took about a week.
Yeah.
So you were Facebook and Instagram?
Yeah,
the
I
time?
think so at that point. Yeah, because that's how we sold bouquets on
Yeah.
Instagram.
Okay. So then you get through year one, you survive it. Year two, did you expand?
Testament memory. Did we stay in the same garden? Year two, we did.
Yes, we did.
So year two is very
That's
similar to year
true,
one.
yeah.
It was 2020.
Yeah.
We sold more bouquets, but still the same way. I think we did our first wedding. We did maybe one or two that year. So year two was very similar to year one.
To year one, and that was partially because of the freaking circumstances of the year.
Right.
You know, so, a bouquet delivery service in 2020 would have done a lot better. You know, it
Yeah.
just
Yes.
you wouldn't have had a whole lot of options other than that.
Yeah.
Okay, so then year three.
We scaled up.
Yes.
Okay, how much?
We went to 1 or 2 acres. What was it back there?
Oh, it was maybe one.
1?
Yeah.
Okay. 1 acre. We
That
moved
seems-
locations.
Okay.
Well, we kept the same garden, which the original garden is probably like 100 feet by 70
Yeah.
with the big asparagus right in the middle patch. So that kind of cuts a lot out, but that's typically her vegetable garden. So
It was.
yeah.
It was. Yeah.
Is
So
no
she-
longer?
No.
Did you
Yeah,
get a
not at all.
replacement vegetable garden?
Yes.
Okay, good.
So we kept that location and then we added an acre kind of, I don't know, a little bit farther away, not right next to it. So that was kind of inconvenient, having 2
Yeah.
gardens in separate spots. And
Yeah.
have you ever read the book Lean Farming?
Mm-mm.
It wasn't convenient. Having
wasn't lean.
tools in different places and, you're always looking for things. It was
It was a long way to walk if you forgot something.
a lot
Cuts
more
a lot
work
of time
because
out.
of that.
Yeah.
But also that we scaled up, right?
Mm-hmm.
We grew a lot of dahlias that year,
I would say we just grew a lot more
of everything. We added pumpkins
Yes.
that
We did.
year, which we love having pumpkins and dried flowers. So we kind of added that, extending our season into the fall a little bit more, which, like we said, my mom and dad are corn and soybean farmers. So harvest time isn't the best time because I also help on the farm during harvest and it's just a busy time of year. But for our business, we needed to extend the season, not just have 3 months of flowers. So we definitely added that year pumpkins, dried flowers, dried flower wreaths.
And so, did you learn how to do? Because there's a skill to doing dried flowers. It's not like a matter of just sticking it there and letting it dry. Like, did you? I mean,
Kind of.
Yeah. I'm saying like, hang. You know, you.
Did we
hang
take a
it.
class or something
Yeah,
for that?
Was there some?
No, we did not.
We
Okay.
just played around,
Just kind of
figured it out.
Okay, cool.
Probably did some reading.
Yeah.
Just that, yeah.
YouTube's this amazing
Sure.
place where you can learn
It really is. What can't you learn?
literally anything at this point.
Yeah.
And so at this point, do you know, your first 2 years for sure, you were working out of your little shed next to your garden, right? So had you kind of expanded that side as well of like, do you need more storage?
Year 3 we went to the garage.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it was.
We did a little garage conversion that year. So we like moved the cars out, cleaned it, didn't paint. I think I painted the floor and filled some cracks. And like that was the extent of fixing the garage up. It wasn't much. We just needed a space to design flowers.
Yeah.
And I don't even think we really sold out of the garage at that point. We were just working in it.
I think we did sell out of it a little bit.
Okay,
Self-serve.
well, not many
I
people
think that's
came.
when we started self-serve out of the garage.
That was the next year.
Well, that's when it ramped up.
Okay.
Okay, so then where you know, you expand this, you take it from 60 by 100 to an acre, which is a lot. Where did you then start selling them? Were you still doing the bouquet delivery? Had you moved on?
Yes, we quit doing the bouquet delivery. It was definitely not making us any money. We built the website. We sold bouquets online. We did a lot more weddings. We didn't do a CSA yet that year.
How did you get your first wedding?
I
I
think
think
they
it was
contacted us.
But it was a friend of the family.
Okay.
It was the first couple weddings.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And talk to me a little bit about that, about arranging for a wedding. Are the brides coming to you in the spring going, this is going to be my wedding, these are my colors? Or is it like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think about that from, it's very different, like growing your own and supplying. Like, were you growing all of the flowers or were you kind of having to piece together? Like, how did that work?
So if the wedding is in growing months, then yes, we grow for it. And brides for the most part contact us far before their wedding, a year plus.
Yeah.
So
You can plan.
they're on top of it. Yeah. So we'll plant flowers for their wedding, knowing what they want. But if it is a wedding out of season, so like a December wedding, then we'll have to order wholesale flowers.
And so that's been, I got to imagine that was its own adventure. And then you take the pricing piece into it and everything else. Like, how much am I supposed to mark it up? Like,
Yeah, so that was probably also losing us money at the beginning and that was my fault because I kind of take the reins on like booking weddings and talking with the bride and figuring out the prices. And I definitely did not charge. I recently took a class on how to charge for weddings as a florist because like we're a little different being farmer florists, but in the winter we're straight florist. We're not growing any of this stuff.
right.
So yeah, I know I didn't charge enough at the beginning, but we're also learning and we need photos and
Yeah.
so I don't think of it as
Complete loss.
right.
And it's not, it's not. Like
It's
you
learning.
said, well, and you added to your portfolio, you got a little more experience about like the efficiencies of arranging and setting up and all of that, because I got to imagine that's all its own beast as well. So you did a couple weddings that year, built your website. When you're selling the online bouquets, like, are you delivering? Like, are
You
they
can
being
add
shipped?
delivery.
Or are they
No, we
coming to
don't do
pick 'em up?
shipping yet.
Okay.
I would like to add shipping at some point, but we don't right now. And a lot of the flowers that we grow can't be shipped. So that is the point of us growing them, so that florists that can't normally get, certain flowers that are so delicate, like ranunculus don't ship very well. We've ordered them wholesale in the winter, and they're out of season also, but they just don't hold up.
Yeah, their quality is
Poppies,
awful. Yeah.
things that are really fragile. So,
Right.
I lost my train of thought.
That's okay. And so are you working then, did you start establishing those relationships with those local florists that are,
We've
want those?
Began to.
Okay.
I don't think we have as many as we would like.
It's an avenue for growth. shall we
Yes,
say.
absolutely.
Okay. So then you, like I said, you expand, you do all of that. So then year 4, you've expanded again.
Year 4 is when we really gave the garage a facelift. We built counter and we created something called a flower bar, where we just open our garage up in the morning and it's self-serve, so people can just come make their own arrangement themselves. They can come out to the farm and be in nature.
And so you opened that in 23, 22.
22 was
Okay.
the first year, and it was a awesome, great year. We had lots of people coming out. We did yoga on the farm. We added lots of things that year. We did our first CSA that year. Did a lot more weddings than we'd ever done before. It was our most growth for a single year.
Your biggest growth, biggest expansion
Was 2022.
Yeah, and so on the growing side, then was that all coming off of that 1 acre, or had you expanded?
That year we grew our garden to 2 acres plus the original one.
That's a lot of flowers.
But half of that was pumpkins, tons of pumpkins.
Okay, in anticipation for the fall and
Yes.
extending your
And
growing.
specialty pumpkins are what we grow. The funky looking with warts all over them, or the different colored blue and white pumpkins. That's mostly what we try to.
Which
Okay.
are all edible pumpkins.
Yeah.
No squash.
So tell me about that. Like, why do you decide to go down that path of the funky pumpkins?
No, because they're more decorative, like
Yeah.
the flowers, and because a lot of people are growing pumpkins to sell in the fall. So
You want to do something a little different.
yeah,
Try and stand out.
And it's what we like. Like if we go
that's true too. Yeah.
buy pumpkins, they're gonna look like that. So
Yeah, you don't want just the nice jack-o'-lantern making ones per se.
yeah.
Yeah, you gotta have a little character. I can appreciate that. So, with the flower bar, did you say you were teaching classes at that
Oh
point?
yep, we did classes that year too. Yeah, we did flower arranging and some wreath classes
And
in the garage area. I mean, I shouldn't call it a garage. It's really not a garage anymore. It's our flower shop.
your flower bar.
Yep.
And so, when did you kind of decide, I think we kind of want to teach this? Like, are you the main teacher?
No.
Or, no?
And Amy is the good teacher.
Amy is the one
Yeah.
who's the teacher.
Yeah.
So then when did you go, I think we could teach this. I think people would enjoy this.
We took some classes, just not to learn about farming, but we took a wreath class from Pepper Harrow, and we took some other little classes like that didn't even have to do with flowers, and they're just so much fun. Like the wine and paint classes. I love doing that with girlfriends or sister, mom.
Yeah.
They're just fun. So it's just something to get out, and we're out on the farm. So a lot of people don't live on a farm, and it's nice to get out and be in nature.
Yeah. So then did you, when you were designing space, did you have that vision in mind already? And you're like, we're going to set this up so that we can do this?
Exactly.
Good. That, it's good that you had that vision. I do think experiential classes and things like that are a growing thing, and I think it's just something that people are going to continue to do and continue to enjoy. So have you done any collaborations with other businesses on that? I don't know, you said wreath making. I don't know, I feel like candle making would be a nice little compliment as well.
Yeah, that would be
things
great.
that.
We have a list of classes that we want to add this year, and a lot of them are collabs, but I haven't reached out to anyone yet, so I don't really want to drop any
Any
collabs.
hints?
Yeah, but yes, in the future, this coming year, look for classes of other varieties, not just flowers.
Yeah, there's a lot of complementary things I feel like you can do with flowers.
Absolutely.
So then as you go through that year with the the flower bar and all of that. Like, what else were you were doing weddings? Were you doing markets? I know I've seen you at a few
Yeah,
markets.
we did the Nevada market.
Yeah, our
We also
highway
did
was
Jackson.
last year. Our highway was under
Okay.
construction. Yeah.
So last year, they closed down the highway in front of our house, and you could turn into our house, onto our gravel road coming from Nevada. But if you were coming from the east, you could not turn on our road. And also, if you were going back to Nevada, you couldn't turn back onto the highway.
Right.
So that really
Hurt.
hurt the self-serve farm store. You know, no one came out there.
Yeah.
And we knew that was gonna happen, so we signed up for the market knowing like we gotta do something else. You know, we still opened it. Our neighbors came every once in a while, but you know, it wasn't anything like the year before.
Yeah.
The year before was awesome, and we were so excited for the next year, and then it was like, wah, wah.
Yeah. Well, sometimes it's like that. I drove that road many times back
Yeah.
and forth between Ames and here, and yeah, it was a pain. I didn't even think about that, but yeah, that road that you guys are on, you can, and there's no way back unless you go up to
All
Colo.
gravel, or yeah, unless they.
Yeah, go
Right.
back to Colo, take the exit, and come back that way. But that's, you know, another 4 or 5 miles out of the way sort of situation. Bummer. So then you signed up for the markets. How did the markets go?
So we signed up in May, right? Or maybe April. I'm not sure when Nevada put
We
out their
started in
thing.
May.
It was a little later sign up, but the road, we knew about the road, so we signed up for that. We plant everything in June. We'd maybe done one market before we planted everything in June, and with peonies, and that market was great. We sold everything first week.
Well, we plant earlier, but we start cutting in June. Generally.
So we planted all of our crops for that year, and then like a week after we got them all in the ground, they got like drift from nitrogen from the field next to it, and literally killed the whole crop. So market was a little lacking in flowers, I would say. We definitely didn't have any in June. We missed a few markets. We replanted and we had late summer flowers later in the year. But the spring is when everyone wants flowers, or early summer. That's the hot time to get flowers.
Yeah.
And we had nothing for market.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit more. My mother and father have gone back and forth years and years about my dad spraying her garden. It seems like it's the same conversation every year. To the point where they moved the garden last year, and my mom was still convinced that my dad was spraying the peas. Found out it was rabbits. That was what it was.
Thankfully.
Thankfully. But I will say it probably did get sprayed in previous years. You know, drift is a thing, it happens, and you guys, it's the family farm, it's corn and soybeans, like there's things that are used, there's chemicals, like that's always a risk. It is always what happens.
Yep.
So how many hours had you guys spent planting?
Oh my goodness, we had between 7,000 and 10,000 flowers planted.
All by hand. I mean, I don't know how long.
Yeah, we started from seed. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
going into the ground. And so you're typically, when are you guys planting? May-ish? Or
Yeah, frost date is
April,
Early
May.
May.
Something's going earlier though.
well.
but-
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, we probably had been planting for at least 2 weeks straight, all day, sun up to sundown, both
Yeah.
of us.
in order to get those in the ground.
Mhm.
And so then
And we were like on top by June 1st, I think was when we were done. And we're like, this is the best, like this is gonna be the best season. Last year was
Yeah.
so good. We got everything in so early. We're freaking rocking it.
we're sitting pretty.
Ugh.
And then so this was
Just like that.
yes. This was beginning of June?
Yes.
Beginning of June.
June
When-
4th.
June 4th. Not that you remember the date. So June 4th. Did you know they were spraying that day?
Well, they didn't spray the one swipe
Closest
along
to the
garden
because
Right.
of the wind that
Yeah,
day. Yeah,
so-
they were trying.
So then the next morning, there was no wind. And I was out in the garden. It was like 6 a.m. And the sprayer goes by and sprays. Like, I would have said, yeah, go ahead. It's perfect time. And then just this like, it wasn't like a huge gust, but I could feel the spray on my skin, you know, just as he drove by. And I was like,
Shit.
Yeah.
Like
And the
that's
thing
gonna
with
that's gonna kill them.
flowers,
But it wasn't much.
the flowers are basically weeds, you know, in a cornfield. So they don't have any traits like a cornfield or a bean field would have that are gonna protect them from a herbicide, so.
So it's not gonna take a large dose.
Right, they're
But
more
it's
susceptible.
Not
yes.
like they just like fell over and died. They actually
They looked awful.
no. At first they looked normal. We're like, are they gonna die or not? They were like stunted almost, like they just weren't growing.
Yeah.
But they were green, you know. So it was like a week of agony. Like, are they gonna die or are they not gonna die? They're not really growing anymore. And then eventually they turned brown.
They turned brown and we knew what had happened.
Mm.
So it's
Yeah.
one of those things you so you feel it on your skin. Did you immediately know? Like immediately?
I mean, I was scared,
Yeah.
Yeah,
but
I was pretty sure.
I didn't like. They're so tiny, you know,
Yeah.
like this big, and then there's the fabric that they're planted in. So, you know, maybe it didn't touch up. Like I wasn't sure at that point, but I was just like,
There's
Mom.
there's that impending dread
Yes.
of you know what's coming. And so you go a week and then you see all of your hours and hours and hours and hours of planting brown.
yeah. And
Yeah.
we are very different people, my mom and I. And I am just crying, like, I don't know. I'm like, I gotta write on Instagram, I gotta tell everyone everything's dead. And my mom's like, it's okay,
Sit with
let's
it.
just
sit with it a minute.
and then we'll decide what our game plan is. You know, she's like a rock. So I sat with it for like, I don't know, a couple hours. And then I wrote it on Instagram. And then she's out there planting new seeds. She never stopped. And maybe that's how she dealt with it.
It
just
is,
by ignoring
sure.
it.
Sure, well, I didn't ignore it, but a plan of action
Right.
is
You
always better
started
than stewing on
working
it. Yes.
towards what's gonna fix it. And
Right.
I mean, I don't even think I walked in the garden for like 2 weeks.
Yeah, I didn't see much of you when I was doing, but it was
I
okay.
was just in my
finding
sorrow,
alone.
like
yeah.
so
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's just me.
I think I would have been a mix of the two. I probably would have been crying as I'm planting.
Yeah.
I think that's how I would have dealt with it. Okay, so you write this on Instagram, basically announce it to the world, and you know, I gotta imagine as you're like writing this caption, you're like, oh, we have this booked, we had this planned, like I'm gonna have to call XYZ, like I'm gonna disappoint XYZ, like all of
Yeah.
these emotions have to be happening as you just have this catastrophic thing that happens in agriculture. Like it's one of those things. You're not the first flower farm to get sprayed. You won't be
Sure.
the last.
Right.
Hopefully this year.
Yes, hopefully this is it for us.
Yeah.
But,
But it's in the same spot this year. So.
Yeah. So it's fine. It's at least you're more aware. Maybe tell them only if the wind is. out of the
I'll
south.
go walk the bean field. They don't need to spray. I will walk it for them.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Great.
We've already said that.
Okay. I was gonna say compromise, and it's hard to there's recourse, I suppose, possibly, probably, for overspray and stuff like that. But like
But it's
your
her
I
farm.
was saying it's your family
Right,
farm. Like you're
right.
not gonna.
and they felt bad. They did.
course they did.
I mean, we were still speaking after it all happened. It was,
Yeah.
you know, it
Like
was
no
what
one
it
was
yeah.
blamed.
No,
It
it
was
wasn't
just-
intentional. It's
yeah.
just it's farming in Iowa, gardening in Iowa. It just is.
Well, and
Yeah.
it's farming in general. You know,
Sure.
at some point you're doing it long enough, some shit's gonna happen that like
Yeah.
wasn't supposed to happen and ruin. Like it just floods. Derecho,
Sure.
great example. Like
Right.
nothing you can really do,
Right.
and then it just happens.
That's farming. It's all
Yes.
risk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So okay, so you write this Instagram post. What was the response from people?
I mean, I follow a lot of flower farmers on Instagram, but a lot that I've never talked to, and I didn't know if they followed me back or anything, you know. But the community just, everyone reached out. They were so kind. We had flower farmers driving to drop off plugs from Winterset, you know, that they had planted for succession planting later in the year, and Hannah from Minerva's Meadows, she is in State Center, and she graciously gave us flowers for like, we had a flower class scheduled, we had a couple weddings that were soon, you know, we could order for some stuff, but obviously I'd rather order or buy from flower farmers that are growing in the area. And we did, we ordered from so many of them. And it was so heartwarming to see the community like rally around us when, I don't know, I just didn't expect it.
Yeah.
You know?
You never feel like people owe you anything. And
Right.
you
Like
know,
I didn't put it out there
No.
for anyone to come help me. I was just like,
This is what
by
happened.
the way, we don't have flowers if you want flowers, you know? Because
Yeah.
like I had people reaching out. It's spring. It's when people want flowers.
Right.
And it was really awesome to see.
Yeah. Cool. So, but luckily it was a blessing and a curse. It was June, so you could replant and
Mhm.
still have something, just maybe later than everybody wanted. So then what was that like the rest of the year as you then started to look out? Were you like, okay, I think this is gonna be fine, or were you still
No, it was never going to be
what it was?
right. It was going to be a get through it year. We had started experimenting with forcing bulbs indoors in the wintertime to extend our season into the winter months a little bit. And so we had a full scale lily growing in crates, forcing inside started. So we did have lilies through the whole year, which is a nice focal flower. So we had more of our own flowers than it seemed like we would have up front. And then the perennials survived things pretty good. So yeah.
But overall, I would say this season was
Yeah.
a bust.
Oh, for
Yeah.
sure.
You know,
You can't do it on one flower, right?
yeah.
And
We made it through. We committed. We fulfilled our commitments, and now we're on to the next year. We're
Yeah.
done with 2023.
2023 2023 is over. Man, that is I take a deep breath and I completely empathize and sympathize with you, having, you know, been through similar challenges in that way, you know, to just put in all that hard work, have all this optimism and expectations for this year and know what it can be, to then just come up short and just not
It's
have.
not like there's crop insurance for flowers, or if there is, we don't have it.
You know, and that was so it was actually, I was telling my husband the story of, you know, this happening to you guys last year, because I had seen an Instagram post, I knew all about it and everything, and he goes, well, do they not like get insured? I'm like, oh no, crop insurance is like corn and soybeans, and there's a whole system behind that and subsidies and things like that. I said, you know, specialty crops, like it may be insurable, like depending, but oftentimes, like if it's insurable, the premiums are going to be cost prohibitive because it's, you know, it's complicated.
It's not something I've looked into, and I've talked to other flower farmers about it, and nobody really has.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not
insurance.
even on their greenhouses. Like when
Well,
Pepper Harrow got hit by the tornado, they lost their greenhouses and they
Well,
weren't insured.
I don't think you can insure like a
Yeah.
group house. No.
Yeah. So it's not as easy in that respect, where you don't necessarily have that backing, and it is what it is. Welcome to the specialty crop world,
Yeah.
if you will.
Yeah.
But yeah, so man, rough year for you guys, 2023. But so as we come into like 2024, have you guys already started some flowers? Like, is that already well underway as we sit here in February and January?
Yep, so we are still forcing bulbs inside. So we have a pretty good crop of tulips right now, getting ready to bloom, hopefully by Valentine's Day. Pink tulips, and then I've already started some of the seeds. Some seeds take a long time to germinate and are very slow growers. So I've started some eucalyptus and some other things like that indoors already.
So tell me a little bit about you know, you mentioned it a few times, the forcing of the bulbs. Like, tell me more about that. Like, what is it? Why do you do it?
So the tulips, we buy pre-chilled bulbs, and then we plant them in bulb crates in a soilless mix actually. In the fall, we planted them in like November, I think, end of November. And then we put them in a cooler and hold them at 40 degrees, and they'll develop a root system. So then we have to calculate when we want to take them out of the cooler to have them bloom by what date, and then we grow them under lights indoors.
Okay.
Yeah. So we've got the tulips going right now. We planted some lilies, hoping to have them for Mother's Day. Lilies take a lot longer. Under some lights in the back of the shop where the guys are working actually, but and then otherwise we're just starting seeds for next spring. I'm doing a little bit of dried flower work this winter. Like to expand on that maybe for some season extension as well.
Yeah. And so as you are looking at all the different varieties, I think there's one particular lily that caught my eye when you were sharing them. It's like an eyeliner lily, where it's like white and then has the black. It's super cool.
It is cool.
So like, when you're making the decisions of like what varieties are we gonna offer, what ones are we gonna grow, is it mainly like these are the popular colors, it seems, for weddings, or you know, we have this wedding, so we definitely have to do these colors, but like when you get into things like the eyeliner lilies, things like that, like where are you finding them? What makes you decide, yes, we're gonna do this, or no, we're not?
Yeah, there's a lot of bulb suppliers. We go through their catalogs, and yeah, I start with the spreadsheet. You know, I want to have, like for example, at the end of September or August going into September, I want to have Iowa State color lilies. 4th of July, I like to have some red ones. This year I have a lot of red ones ordered for Christmas time, so we can do some Christmas arrangements.
So you have to order the bulbs like a year in advance.
Yeah.
So she's already made the spreadsheet and everything's ordered, and they'll just be shipped every other week throughout the whole year.
Yeah, so when they're shipped, I have to know what color I want to be ready at what time. Yeah.
So there's a lot of planning. Yes.
Yeah.
A lot of planning that goes in it. And then, so when you're looking at the layout of your flower garden, do you call it a garden at this point?
Sure.
Do you call it a field?
Sure.
I don't know it.
we seem to just call it a garden
I
now.
was gonna say, I don't know at how many acres does it then become a field.
I'm sure it's a field, but we still call it a garden.
So when you're looking at like, okay, here's my 2 acres, are you physically drawing out like, here's going to be the ranunculus?
Yes,
Gonna...
I do.
Okay,
yeah.
and what goes where and why?
I group, like there's a class of flowers that like it cool. They'll be blooming in May. I planted those last fall out in the garden, and they're going to winter over. They're biennials, but I'm tricking them into blooming the first year. So they're all in one garden. We made all our beds 36 by 36. So we just know how many flowers will plug into a row.
It's very mathematical,
Yeah.
the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like one tray of plugs fits in one row, and and we call them blocks. Each chunk of rows is 6 rows. That's 36 by 36.
I've been trying to grow more perennials, so I put all the perennials in the same bed, so that bed will just always be, I mean, no extra work, not a lot of extra work in the spring. All the hot summer flowers are in
Dried flowers.
Yeah, they're in their own section.
Vegetables. We still have a vegetable section just for us to eat. Obviously, we don't sell that.
Yeah. So basically what you're telling me, like, flower farm isn't just throw some seeds out in bed and see what grows. I mean,
That's not the best. That's not the best plan, right?
Yeah,
You
but
could definitely do it for home growers. It's beautiful,
yes. But if you're gonna do it for market, like there's significant planning and it has to be done.
Right.
yes.
And I want to have things every season. I want things as early as I can get them and as late as I can have them.
And you want complementary colors blooming at the same time.
Yes.
Every flower takes a different amount of time to bloom.
Right.
So you have to try to time everything so that you have colors that can make a bouquet.
Yeah, there's a lot of planning that goes into it.
and then nothing is a guarantee because you're dealing with nature. So you're hoping, like right now, I'm hoping my tulips will be ready. But has the temperature been right? Have they had the right amount of light? Will they be ready?
Yes.
They'll be ready in February anyway.
Yeah. Well,
So.
and I always tell people on the crickets, and it's anything in farming, is you can do everything right, all of it, doesn't matter. Still, they'll do what they want to do,
Sure.
kind of thing. Like they'll just keel over and die, even if you looked at them wrong, kind of a situation, you know.
Sure.
It's you control what you can control, and you plan what you can plan. But
Right.
at the end of the day, it's just kind of what happens is what happens.
Yes.
So then, as you guys come off of that crappy 2023, what are you guys looking forward to in 2024?
I'm looking forward to more weddings. Like, I love event work, and I like being challenged in that aspect. Someone giving me an idea of something I've never done, and then trying to figure out the mechanics behind it. Because we don't use flower foam, or, you know, we just basically use chicken wire and build structures and moss, and then, yeah, I don't know. Figuring out how to do something that I've never done is always fun.
Yeah.
In the design world. How about you?
I'm just trying to refine my growing techniques so that I don't have to work quite as many hours. Figure out which flowers to keep, which ones to edit out of my plan, and more perennials.
Yeah. And do you feel like, we kind of already talked about the pricing and the undervaluing and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like you would have had enough data
To
until
do
this
that.
year? Yeah.
No, I don't, because we're not formally trained. I can see the advantage to having some education going in, but we've learned the hard way, which is how I usually do it. So yeah, I think it's time now we weren't ready when we started 5 years ago to jump in like we are now this year. So I think we're prepared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So big things.
Yeah.
Making sure we are looking at the wind forecasts for sure. Either that or, I don't know, construct some sort of
Barriers, yeah. Cover things, yeah.
I can.
Yeah. And like she said, we'll weed those rows. Give us like 24. We'll weed them.
Yeah. Well, and that's is it going to be beans this year?
No, it's corn this year.
Okay. Well, then there's no need. Just
Yeah.
let them roll. Just
Yeah.
it's 24.
It'll
See what
be-
happens.
Yeah.
It'll be fine. Worst case, you could go down and hand spray if you like really had to or something. Yeah. I think
Yeah.
there's a compromise to be found,
Yeah.
and I think that the boys will possibly be a little.
More aware of because I think they got a lot of
I know. I felt kind of bad.
Harassment
like after
over
I
that.
posted it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I didn't even blame anyone in the post, I don't think.
Yeah.
But yeah, they got
hit up a lot about it.
I'm sure they did. Well,
Yeah.
and but that being said, anybody who's been around the farming world or involved in farming, like, knows that it happens. Like,
Exactly.
it does happen. It's they didn't start that day going, whoa, look what I'm gonna do today. Look at the damage I'm gonna do.
yeah.
It's part of it, and it's a bummer that it happened to you guys, and I'm glad that you were able to make it through and salvage what you could, but it's one of those things that
I think we figured out we're committed anyway.
Yeah.
We stuck with it. So.
And we had so many great years honestly before
yeah,
in the growing part of it.
right.
So it's bound to happen.
yeah,
Right?
well, and also maybe you just
Hopefully
need to
not.
make,
Well, I mean, hardships are normal.
and maybe that's a sign that you need to like take over a big section there.
Grow?
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe.
Wow.
I don't know if we can with
I
us two.
might have to get a little more mechanical in some of the things, and but that's all right.
True.
So yeah, is there anything else that you want to let people know? Like anything else you have coming up? Like do you have classes coming up, or is that something to be expected then?
Classes
summer?
aren't posted yet, and CSAs are probably gonna go live this next week.
So in
So
February.
you can sign up. Yep. So you can sign up for CSAs. We have 3 different CSAs: a spring, summer, and a late summer. And it's just like a weekly bouquet of flowers. We'll have multiple pickup locations, and we are going to do a market again this year. I think we're gonna go not to the Des Moines market, but a market in Des Moines, just to try something new. Expand our network a little bit.
Yeah, and see what works and what doesn't, sort of
Yeah.
situation. Awesome. Okay, so if people want to get flowers,
Mhm.
follow along, book you for a wedding, any of the above, where should they go?
thevineryflowers.com, or you can follow us on Instagram. It's the Vinery Flowers as well. And you can look for tulips soon because hopefully they'll be blooming for Valentine's Day, but no promises. Stay tuned on Instagram and we'll see.
Awesome. Well, ladies, thank you for sitting down with me and sharing the story of Vinery and how it came to be. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Of course.